the crimson sun of Kepler-9. Kepler-9 cast long shadows across the sprawling military training compound, its dying light reflecting off the chrome and steel structures that jutted from the alien landscape like metallic growths. The air hummed with the constant thrum of containment fields and atmospheric processors, a technological symphony that had become as familiar as breathing to the cadets stationed on this remote world. Cadet Marius adjusted the weight of his tactical vest, feeling the familiar bite of the straps against his shoulders. At 19, he was among the youngest in his cohort, but what he lacked in years, he made up for in determination. His dark eyes scanned the assembly area, where dozens of cadets in matching gray uniforms stood at attention, their faces a mixture of excitement and barely contained nervousness. "Listen up, maggots." Commander Alden's voice cut through the evening air like a plasma blade. The grizzled officer strode before them, his weathered cheese bearing the scars of a dozen campaigns across the outer rim. His artificial left arm gleamed dully in the fading light, a testament to the brutal realities they were training to face. Tonight marks the culmination of your xenobiology survival training. You've studied the theories, run the simulations, and practiced on hollow dummies. But theory doesn't bleed, and hollow dummies don't hunt back. The commander's pale blue eyes swept across the assembled cadets, lingering momentarily on Marius. Your objective is simple. Enter Sector 7 of the containment zone, locate the designated apex predator and successfully capture it using non-lethal methods. You have 12 hours. Failure means another month of basic training. Hesitation means your squad mates might not come home. Marius felt his heart quicken. The apex predator. He'd read every file, watched every footage available, but seeing one in person would be different. These creatures weren't native to Kepler-9. They'd been brought here from the Helix Nebula, genetically modified for enhanced aggression and survival instincts. Perfect training tools for future soldiers who might face similar threats on countless worlds. Dr. Kyra will brief you on the specific parameters. Alden continued, gesturing to a tall woman in a white lab coat who stepped forward. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her green eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd spent years studying the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. The specimen you'll be tracking is Designation Alpha 7. Dr. Kyra began, her voice carrying the precise cadence of an academic. It's a modified Dracorian stalker, approximately 3 meters in length, with enhanced sensory capabilities and adaptive camouflage. While sedated, these creatures present minimal threat, but they can become active without warning. Their primary hunting method involves tracking prey through biological markers, blood sweat pheromones. They're also capable of periods of extreme stillness, which has been observed but not fully understood. A cadet near the front raised her hand. "Doctor, what's the safe distance for observation?" "There is no safe distance," Dr. Kyra replied matter-of-factly. These creatures can move at speeds of up to 60 kilometers per hour in short bursts. However, the containment field in Sector 7 will prevent it from leaving the designated area. Your stun weapons should be effective at close range, but remember, you need to capture it alive. Marius felt his mouth go dry. 60 kilometers per hour. In the simulations, the fastest enemies they'd faced moved at half that speed. He touched the sonic stunner at his hip, its weight both reassuring and inadequate. Cadet Elara. His closest friend in the academy stood to his left. She caught his eye and offered a slight smile that didn't quite hide her nervousness. They'd trained together for the past 8 months, covering each other's backs through a dozen scenarios. If anyone was going to watch out for him tonight, it would be her. "You'll be divided into teams of 4, Commander Alden announced. Team leaders will be designated by your performance evaluations. Marius, you're leading Team 7. Your teammates are Cadets Elara, Bennett, and Torres." Pride mixed with apprehension in Marius's chest. This was his chance to prove himself, but it also meant 3 lives depending on his decisions. He straightened his shoulders and nodded firmly. "Sir, yes, sir." The next hour passed in a blur of equipment checks and final briefings. The teams were issued night vision gear, portable containment units, medical supplies, and enough rations for the 12-hour mission. As the sun finally disappeared behind the jagged peaks of Kepler-9's mountains, artificial lights illuminated the compound in harsh white radiance. "Remember," Dr. Kyra addressed them one final time, "these creatures are not mindless beasts. They've been observed displaying problem-solving abilities and what might be considered tactical thinking. Don't underestimate them, just because they're not human." With that ominous warning, the teams began their march towards Sector 7. The containment zone was a vast area of preserved alien wilderness surrounded by energy barriers that kept the experimental creatures within while allowing researchers and trainers controlled access. As they passed through the first checkpoint, scanners verified their identities and recorded their biometric data. "Nervous?" Alara asked as they began the trek through the outer perimeter. "Terrified?" Marius admitted. "But that's normal, right?" "If you weren't scared, I'd be worried about your sanity," Bennett chimed in. He was a stocky cadet from the mining colonies, all muscle and practical common sense. "My dad used to say fear keeps you alive if you don't let it control you." Torres, the fourth member of their team, remained silent. The quiet cadet from the outer rim had a reputation for being unflappable under pressure, but Marius could see the tension in his jaw. They were all dealing with the nerves in their own ways. The path to Sector 7 wound through increasingly dense vegetation. The native flora of Kepler-9 was unlike anything in Earth's databases. Towering ferns with crystalline fronds that chimed in the wind trees, with bark that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns, and ground cover that seemed to shift and whisper as they passed. Their night vision gear painted everything in ghostly green hues, making the alien landscape even more surreal. "Contact." Their comm units crackled. "Team 3 has visual on their target in Sector 5, beginning approach." "Lucky bastards," Bennett muttered. "Bet they get done in half the time." "This isn't a race," Marius reminded him, though he felt the same competitive urge. The Galactic Defense Corps fostered healthy rivalry among cadets, but real operations required patience and precision. "We do this right, not fast." They reached the Sector 7 entrance 2 hours after departure. The energy barrier hummed ominously, a curtain of distorted air that marked the boundary between safety and the unknown. An automated checkpoint scanner verified their authorization, and the barrier flickered open just long enough for them to pass through. The environment on the other side felt different immediately. The air was thicker, laden with unfamiliar scents, and an underlying musk that spoke of predators and prey in an endless dance of survival. Their instruments detected elevated levels of various pheromones, confirming the presence of multiple life forms in the area. Alpha 7 was last tracked to the northwestern quadrant. Alara consulted her tactical display. That was 6 hours ago. "These things are territorial," Torres finally spoke. "It probably hasn't moved far unless something disturbed it." They began their approach moving in a standard diamond formation, with Marius taking point. Every few minutes they paused to scan their surroundings with both instruments and naked senses. The night vision revealed the heat signatures of small creatures scurrying through the underbrush, but nothing matching the profile of their target. 3 hours into the hunt, they found signs. Deep gouges in the crystalline bark of a tree, too regular to be natural, and too large to belong to any of the smaller predators they had studied. Marius knelt beside a clear print in the soft earth, three-toed with claw marks extending nearly 10 centimeters from each digit. "Fresh," Alara whispered, running her scanner over the track. "Less than an hour old." "It's moving north," Bennett observed, pointing to another print several meters away. "Probably heading for the water source near grid reference 7-7-3. They followed the trail through increasingly treacherous terrain. The ground became rocky and uneven, forcing them to watch their footing while maintaining awareness of their surroundings. Marius felt sweat building under his gear, despite the cool night air. Every shadow could be hiding their target, Every sound could signal an attack. That's when it happened. While climbing over a fallen log, Marius misjudged the distance and scraped his forearm against a sharp projection. The fabric of his uniform tore, and he felt the sting of broken skin. A thin line of blood welled up along a shallow cut. "You okay?" Alara immediately noticed him favoring the arm. "Just a scratch," Marius replied, pulling out a medical seal to cover the wound. But as he applied the healing compound, a drop of blood fell to the ground below. The effect was immediate and terrifying. From somewhere in the dense foliage ahead came a sound that made their blood run cold. A low rumbling breath that seemed to vibrate through their bones. Then another and another, growing closer with each exhalation. Their instruments went wild, detecting massive heat signatures and chemical traces that matched their target profile perfectly. "It knows we're here," Torres whispered, raising his stunner. Through the alien ferns, they caught their first glimpse of Alpha 7. Even in the green-tinted world of their night vision, it was magnificent and terrifying. The creature stood nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder. Its body a masterwork of predatory evolution. Scaled hide in mottled patterns of deep gray and black provided perfect camouflage, while rows of sensor organs along its head track its prey with mechanical precision. Its eyes, however, were what truly unnerved them. Intelligent calculating, measuring them as threats and potential meals. The Dracorian stalker moved with fluid grace, despite its size, each step precisely placed to minimize sound. Its head swayed slightly from side to side, and Marius realized with horror that it was following the scent of his blood like a trail marker. "Fall back to position 2. Marius ordered, his voice barely audible. They'd drilled this scenario dozens of times. Establish distance, set up overlapping fields of fire, wait for the optimal moment to deploy the capture net. But the creature didn't follow standard predator behavior. Instead of rushing forward in a typical hunting charge, it began to circle them, staying just at the edge of visual range. Occasionally they caught glimpses of movement, a flash of scales, or the glint of predatory eyes, but never a clear shot for their stun weapons. "It's playing with us," Bennett said, his usual confidence shaken. "No." Dr. Kyra's briefing echoed in Marius's mind. "It's showing intelligence. It knows what we are, what we're capable of. It's trying to separate us." The stalking continued for an excruciating hour. The creature would appear, advance slightly, then fade back into the undergrowth when they adjusted their positions. It was testing their defenses, learning their patterns. Marius felt frustrated and helpless. This wasn't how the simulations had gone. Then Torres made a mistake. Seeing movement to his left, he pivoted quickly, and his foot caught on a root. He stumbled his weapon, discharged harmlessly into the canopy, and for just a moment he was separated from the group. The apex predator struck like lightning. One moment Torres was regaining his balance, the next, a massive shadow had bounded from the vegetation and was bearing down on him with frightening speed. The cadet managed one strangled shout before the creature's momentum carried him to the ground. But instead of the killing strike, they all expected something extraordinary happened. The predator suddenly convulsed, its powerful limbs going rigid. It toppled sideways, falling heavily next to Torres with what sounded like a final labored breath. The cadet scrambled away, stunner raised, but the creature lay motionless. "What the hell?" Bennett breathed. They approached cautiously, weapons trained on the still form. Up close, the apex predator was even more impressive and more unsettling. Its scales seemed to have a faint iridescent quality, and its breathing was so shallow as to be nearly undetectable. "Is it dead?" Alara asked. Marius consulted his bioscanner. "I'm reading very minimal life signs. Heart rate around 5 beats per minute, brain activity almost nil. It's like it's in some kind of extreme hibernation state." "Convenient," Torres muttered, still shaken from his close encounter. Maybe all that intelligence is overrated. Something felt wrong to Marius. The attack had been too sudden, the collapse too convenient. Dr. Kyra's words echoed again. These creatures were capable of tactical thinking. What if... Wait, he said, holding up a hand as Alara moved forward with the containment unit. Something doesn't add up. Why would it just collapse like that? There's no sign of disease, no indication it was already injured. Who cares? Bennett said. Mission accomplished. Let's get this thing secured and head back. But Marius couldn't shake his unease. He circled the creature slowly, studying its position. The way it had fallen seemed almost too natural, too controlled. Real death was rarely so neat and peaceful, and its eyes, though nearly closed, seemed to track his movement almost imperceptibly. Everyone stay back, he ordered. I think it's faking. Faking, Torres looked incredulous. You think it's playing dead. It's an animal, not a person. Dr. Kyra said they show signs of high intelligence. What if this is a defensive behavior? Predators that can't win a fight sometimes use deception to escape. His teammates exchanged skeptical glances. The creature certainly looked dead or dying. Its breathing was barely visible, and it showed no response to their voices or movements nearby. To all appearances, they'd accomplished their mission through sheer luck. Commander Alden's voice came through their comm units, making them all jump. Team 7, we show your bio readings indicate elevated stress. Status report. Sir, we've located Alpha 7, Marius responded. The creature appears to be incapacitated. We're assessing the situation. Approach with extreme caution. Several other teams have reported unusual behavior from their targets. Alpha 4 in Sector 3 feigned injury before attacking, and Beta 2 used camouflage in ways not previously documented. These creatures are adapting to our training methods. The warning sent a chill down Marius's spine. His instincts had been right. This was too convenient. But how could they verify his suspicions without putting someone at extreme risk? I'm going to approach slowly, he announced. If it moves everyone, fire at once. That's insane, Bennett protested. If you're wrong, you're lunch. If I'm right and we don't check, it'll escape the moment we turn our backs. Marius holstered his weapon and moved forward step by step. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to run, but his mind forced him to continue. He could feel the weight of his teammates' stares. The collective held breath as he got closer to the massive creature. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter. The predator's eye flicked open and fixed on him. Time seemed to freeze. Marius found himself staring into an alien intelligence that was very much awake and aware. He could see calculation in that gaze, a predatory assessment that chilled him to the bone. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then, with explosive force, the apex predator erupted from its feigned death pose. But instead of attacking Marius, who stood helplessly close, the creature launched itself in the opposite direction. It bounded over Ilara and Bennett, who fired wildly at its moving form, their stun bolts missing by inches. Torres, still shaken from his earlier encounter, hesitated a crucial second before bringing his weapon to bear. The predator hit the containment barrier at full speed and somehow passed through it. How is that possible? Alara shouted as the creature disappeared into the dense forest beyond Sector 7. Their instruments immediately detected the containment breach. Alarms began wailing across the compound as emergency protocols activated. Other teams in nearby sectors received immediate evacuation orders as search and capture teams mobilized. Team 7 report. Commander Alden's voice was sharp with urgency. Sir, Alpha 7 has breached containment. It was playing dead until it found an opportunity to escape. A long pause. Confirmed. We're reading massive electromagnetic fluctuations in Sector 7. The creature somehow disrupted the containment field. All teams are to rally at Checkpoint Charlie immediately. As they made their way back through the now powerless containment zone, Marius felt the weight of failure settling on his shoulders. But mixed with that disappointment was something else. A grudging admiration for the intelligence and cunning of their target. You were right, Alara said quietly as they walked. It was faking the whole time. How did it know to do that? Torres wondered aloud. It's like it understood our tactics better than we understood its capabilities. The gathering at checkpoint. Charlie was tense. Of the 8 teams deployed, only 3 had successfully captured their targets. 2 others had lost track of their quarry, and the remainder had experienced various equipment failures and unusual creature behaviors. Commander Alden looked grimmer than usual as he debriefed each team. When he reached Team 7, his expression was unreadable. Explain what happened. Marius stood at attention and recounted the events in precise detail, from the blood trail to the creature's deceptive behavior to its impossible escape. Alden listened without interruption, occasionally nodding. You suspected it was feigning death? Yes, sir. Something about the timing and circumstances seemed too convenient. But you approached anyway. I believed we needed to verify, sir. If I'd been wrong, we would have lost the creature anyway when we tried to transport it. Dr. Kira emerged from a nearby command shelter, her expression thoughtful rather than angry. Commander, I've been analyzing the data from all teams tonight. The creatures are demonstrating behaviors we've never documented before. Alpha 7's deception was the most sophisticated, but several others showed signs of tactical adaptation. Meaning our training methods may be training them as much as our cadets. These creatures are learning from each encounter, developing countermeasures to our standard procedures. Alden absorbed this information with the stoicism of a career military officer, but Marius could see the concern in his eyes. What's your recommendation, Doctor? We need to completely revise our approach. These creatures are too intelligent for conventional training scenarios. We're not just dealing with predators anymore, we're dealing with opponents capable of strategic thinking. Over the following days, the escaped Alpha 7 became something of a legend among the cadets. Search teams found traces of its passage throughout the containment zone and beyond, but the creature itself remained elusive. It had apparently found ways to avoid the automated sensors and patrols that should have contained it. Marius found himself both frustrated and fascinated by the experience. In the Academy's tactical review sessions, he found himself defending his decision to suspect the creature's deception even as others criticized his failure to capture it. You could have been killed, one instructor pointed out. If I hadn't checked, it would have escaped anyway the moment we relaxed our guard. Marius replied, At least this way we learned something valuable about its capabilities. The incident led to significant changes in the Academy's training protocols. Dr. Kira worked with the tactical instructors to develop new scenarios that accounted for the creature's intelligence. Cadets began learning to think of their targets not as animals, but as adversaries capable of deception and strategic planning. 3 weeks after the incident, Marius was called to Commander Alden's office. He entered with some trepidation, unsure whether to expect commendation or punishment. Sir Cadet Marius reporting as ordered. At ease, Alden gestured to a chair across from his desk. I've been reviewing your performance during the Alpha 7 incident. Your tactical assessment was sound, your leadership during the crisis was appropriate, and your post-mission analysis was thorough. Thank you, sir. However, Alden continued, your decision to approach a potentially hostile target without proper backup protocols showed poor judgment. Marius felt his heart sink. Yes, sir. Which is why I'm recommending you for advanced tactical training, Alden said, his stern expression softening slightly. Real combat requires the ability to make difficult decisions with incomplete information. You showed good instincts under pressure, even if your execution could use work. The commander stood and walked to the window overlooking the training grounds. That creature is still out there, you know. We've decided to leave it be for now. It's become an inadvertent test of our perimeter security and emergency response protocols. Every sighting teaches us something new. Any regrets about the containment breach, sir? Alden was quiet for a moment. In the short term, yes. In the long term, that creature taught us more about tactical thinking in one night than months of controlled exercises. You cadets need to understand that your enemies won't follow the rulebook. Sometimes the best training comes from failure. As Marius left the commander's office, he felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and unease. They had failed to capture Alpha 7. But in doing so, they had uncovered something far more important: the realization that intelligence was not exclusively human, and that survival required constant adaptation and learning. Months later, as a newly commissioned officer aboard a patrol vessel in the Outer Rim, Marius would remember the lessons learned that night on Kepler 9. When faced with an unknown alien species that seemed to anticipate his tactical moves, he would recall the apex predator's patient deception and adjust his strategies accordingly. The creature had taught him that in the vast expanse of the galaxy, enemies could come from anywhere and take any form. True strength lay not in superior firepower or rigid protocols, but in the ability to think, adapt, and respect the intelligence of one's opponents, even when that intelligence came from something that looked like nothing more than a dangerous animal. In his final log entry about the Alpha 7 incident, Marius would write, "Today I learned that the most dangerous predators are not those that rely on strength and speed, but those that can think, plan, and deceive." The creature we hunted was not just an animal following instincts. It was an intelligent being capable of complex strategy. I will carry this lesson forward into whatever challenges await among the stars. The apex predator had in its own way become one of his greatest teachers, and somewhere in the forests of Kepler 9, it continued to evade capture, a reminder that the universe was full of surprises for those wise enough to respect them and learn from them. Years later, when Marius had risen to the rank of captain and found himself training new officers, he would tell them the story of Alpha 7. He would emphasize that courage was not the absence of fear, but the will to act despite it. That intelligence could be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the greatest victories came disguised as defeats. The lesson of the apex predator had become part of him, a reminder that in a galaxy full of unknowns, survival depended not on controlling every situation, but on adapting to whatever challenges emerged. The creature had shown them all that sometimes the most effective strategy was not to fight at all, but to choose when and how to engage on one's own terms. In the end, Alpha 7 had accomplished something no instructor ever could. It had taught an entire class of cadets to question their assumptions, respect their opponents, and never underestimate the power of intelligence over brute force. And for that lesson, Marius would always be grateful to the magnificent predator that had outthought them all and disappeared into the alien wilderness of Kepler 9. Free and uncaptured, a symbol of the endless mysteries awaiting discovery among the stars.